Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned, we're going to teach you how to experience growth daily. Hey everybody, Dr. Dad's coming at you with another great episode. This is Dr. David Wardy, and I'm here with my main man, Dr. Nick Jensen. What's up, brother?
Doing well, buddy. I just got off a week with camping with the kids. And,
you look fresh, man.
Feel fresh. Yeah. It's funny though, just getting back into the groove of things is a little challenging, right? You know, we've had a couple of vacations over the summer, and every time it's like, oh yeah, what do I do again? Right. What am I doing when I show up at work? You know, what's the routine like? So it's good to be here though, and connecting on my first day back with you both.
I feel you, man. I was out of town. I was in San Fran since last Thursday. Went and learned a little bit more network spinal, which was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Had a blast. Got to work with some pretty amazing doctors and spent a Saturday kind of wrapped up in that. And then we came home. So yeah, definitely know what you mean on like getting back in the saddle and finding the groove again. So
yeah, totally. You know, it's funny. Like, I mean, the topic that we're going to be discussing today has a lot to do with like understanding foundational movement and structural integrity and those kind of things. And I just can't help but realize just how impactful self-care has been in everybody's recovery. And I just feel like that is something, even when we are away, that I definitely make sure that I keep implementing, because I just recognize just how important it is. So I just want to say that, because, you know, even though you may not remember what it is that you do as an occupation while you're away, there are some things that definitely linger when we are away, and a lot of that goes back to self-care. So which is sort of a tie into the conversation today.
Well, and I love you've been covering this stuff for almost a month, right? And we're going to talk to a woman today. Her name's Eileen Durfee, and pretty much what she does for a living is she helps people do more self-care so that they can take better care of themselves, right? So Eileen, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
So Eileen, let's just jump into it. Tell us about yourself and tell us about, you know, how Creatrix Solutions came about and kind of where we're at today. And then we'll jump into the stuff, the fun tools you sent us, and we'll talk a little bit today.
Well, I've been sick my whole life. It started when the doctor ripped me out with forceps. And I mean, when I started walking, my hips were twisted and one knee hit the other one. They put me in special shoes. They x-rayed my legs. They were the same length. They didn't get me to a good chiropractor, and I was just in constant pain. I grew 9 inches in 3 months.
Oh,
wow.
And I mean, they even excused me from PE because of the hips and the knees. And then I got ran over by a car when I was walking in a parking lot. And it was just like daggers in my chest. Every breath, could barely lift my arms. And that's when I came across Dr. Scherger, who developed exercises to restore the curvature to the spine. But you know, then when I was 20, I got a silver amalgam filling, and then my health went down like crazy. It got so bad at one point, you know, my hair was falling out. I had psoriasis all over my body. I couldn't remember anything. I had panic attacks, anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I had thyroid disease, Hashimoto's. I was a wreck, and I had candida so bad, and then cystitis, and what they gave me were antibiotics and antihistamines. That's what I lived on. I had to carry an EpiPen because my lungs would close up. I would, like, any kind of a odor from carpets or perfumes or chemicals, it was just really bad. I mean, actually, my relative was the one the movie was made about, the boy in the bubble, you know, so I didn't get the greatest genes to start with. My mom was sick as well, but I was managing to switch from prescriptions to natural substances to chase the symptoms. So I did that for a while. And then I came across hair analysis, which kind of was the beginning of a new journey for me, because I was looking more at the root and understanding that some of the things that I was taking were causing some of my new problems or making the root cause worse. And so I got into, detoxification protocols with saunas. And so, I mean, after being a nuclear power plant engineer, auditor, trainer, and traveling all over the United States, I got into real estate, land development, building houses, running construction crews. Then I started managing nonprofit corporations, doing all their financials and board meetings and member integration. And I started having a facility where people could come in and take a sauna. And then I got electric machines like Rife machines and multiple wave oscillators and Bob Beck machines and Holder Clark zappers and, all this stuff, because I literally could sit in that MWO for 30 minutes and be pain free for 2 days.
Wow.
And so, but when I started hair analysis and was taking these certain supplements that they recommended, I found like I didn't have pain. It didn't drive me. I didn't have to go and sit in those machines. So we're really like a car battery that our minerals have been out of whack. And so we don't conduct electricity anymore. So instead of, doing the jumper cable routine, building the nutrition in the body. And so because of being in engineering, and I'm more left brain, there's a lot of inventors in my family. And so, and I'm a gizmo woman. So I just buy everything and try it. And then I think, oh man, I wish it was this and that. I'll go to sleep. And then I see the gizmo, the better way of doing it. And I know how to draw in AutoCAD and all this, and bought my own 3D printer and started building prototypes. And because my dad's a machinist, I didn't have any brothers. And so, I just started playing around and tinkering, and it got to the point where I opened my health business and, started filing patents. Now I have 10 granted patents. 5 of them are around spinal fitness, because of that's such a big thing in my life, to be now 60 years old. If you x-rayed me, I don't have discs that are all worn out. I don't have bones that are all worn off, because I've done regular chiropractic care and used these exercises. And so I made the leap in 2010 and opened up my health company. And then I think I was exclusively just doing my health from about 2013 on. And so now we ship to like 91 countries, and we do, all kinds of stuff. And I just keep on creating more things. I've got more patents pending and more gizmos to make. And it's all about, because there's no silver bullet for health. So you have to think about the air you're breathing, the water you're drinking, what you're putting on your skin, the structure of your spine, because if the nerve impulses aren't getting to the organs, they're not going to be. And then it's about energy, because of fatigue. If you don't have the right shape and you have tight muscles, that consumes a lot of energy. People do not realize. So we want to spend our energy wisely and take the straws off the camel's back. And now at 60 years old, I'm sitting here with no pain. I sleep well. I wake up with energy. It's just, it's taken a while to get here, and I've been my own guinea pig, but I feel like I'm in my 4th life in this life. This is really what I was supposed to be doing.
Wow. What a journey. I mean, you said so many things there. And I think when people hear stories like, okay, you went through autoimmunity, like arthritis, to, massive injuries, like getting hit by a car or run over by a car, like to all these like environmental sensitivities, to heavy metal toxicity. I mean, you sort of check the list of like almost everything that could happen to a human being. And like, it's not your life story. You found a way to overcome it and to reconfigure your body. And you talked about the voltage and electricity and biochemistry and just movement patterns and structural integrity. I mean, you kind of talked about like I said, everything that can happen to someone, and that you can be on the other side of it and speak from this place of knowing and experience that the body can heal if you put it in the right environment. Like what a powerful story. It's amazing.
And that's what I had, this underlying drive, that it's just like, I felt like if my body just had what it needed, that it could heal itself. So
Beautiful.
Well said. Well, and we hear those pain to purpose stories quite a bit, right? I mean, me and Nick, that's our arena. We're constantly, a lot of the stuff you've gone through, those are the type of people we help with things like that, with similar solutions to what you were talking about. And I love it that you have this engineering background, so your brain just automatically can go there, right? You're just looking at systems. And what do I need to work on in my system? What's deficient? What's toxic? I mean, it's we talk about this all the time. It's complicated, but it's simple sometimes when you kind of zoom that lens out a little bit. So today you got lots of goodies on your site, and we'll talk a little bit more on the back end, because I do want you to tell everybody about your website and the things that you offer. But because I am a chiropractor, I'm going to be a little selfish today on the podcast, and you did hook us up with some really neat toys. So we're going to kind of talk about these toys that you sent us, Eileen, and I want to dive into each one and talk about where the design came from, why you designed them the way you did, and then we'll dive into the benefit of using these things for people that have different issues. So let's start with the backtrack, the really cool foam roller that you sent us, because we live in a world now where there's tons of these. I mean, I could probably count on, like, if I had 5 hands, like literally all the foam rollers that have been designed and developed, and now everybody says that, you know, this one's better. But yours is very unique. It doesn't really fit into, you know, that spectrum of most of the foam rollers you see, because most foam rollers we see, they're pretty much just like circumferential around the whole foam roller. They're just flat, right? Like there's no, like yours has a dip. And do you have it with you? If not, I can grab one.
yeah.
But yeah, for the people, if we use the video. So Eileen's holding up her backtrack, and the uniqueness of the foam roller that she has is right in the middle, where most foam rollers still are like solid. She has a gap that wraps around all the way around the middle. So it's kind of like this, like a ring on the inside, where there's basically about a 1/2 inch of a gap that dips in. So when you roll on this thing, it basically gives room for the spinal column to stretch when you're actually rolling your spine. So, you know, I use foam rollers all the time, so does Nick. And when you're rolling your spine, you constantly can feel the pressure up against your spinous processes. You kind of have to roll off to the sides to try to get a little bit more of that paraspinal action. But the thing that I loved about yours was, as soon as you load on the roller and you start rolling out, there's this nice space for the spinal column to move freely. And then you're getting this nice stretching of the facet joints, and even like the meninges beneath that, because there's a lot of fascia that runs within the cord that exits the spinal column. And it gives this really nice effect, and it releases the spine really fast. You know, I don't like most foam rollers because I don't ever feel like you get a full release of the spine. And you can roll a lot on them and loosen your paraspinals, but a lot of times you'll get up and you feel some relief, but it's like it just didn't get into the spine area where you needed it to. So this one's great. Like I did notice, and I use it probably every day now and just play with it, but there's a noticeable shift, and you can get a little bit of cavitation there in the joints. And then when you get up, you do feel an improvement in the spine, the way that you're sitting or standing up. So can you talk a little bit about this guy, how that came about? And then, yeah, let's go from there.
Well, Dr. Sugar always taught me, you know, when doing certain exercises, that we always wanted the spinous to float. Because, you know, like you said, on a regular foam rower, it's flat. Some people, you know, depending on how tight their fascia is or their muscles, what subluxations they have, that could actually rotate a spinous and cause more of an issue. So I knew that it was really important to have a groove for the spinous to float, but also to have it squishy in different densities, because it's not about pain. It is really about getting that movement, like you were talking about, to stretch, you know, every joint. You know, a lot of people don't realize it, but when you don't have the proper S shape, there's so much compression bone on bone that your discs don't float and pump like they're supposed to. So a lot of people's discs are dehydrated. So with this, with that stretching action that you're experiencing, it's actually hydrating the joints as well. And so Dr. Sugar didn't have, like a foam roller, but I had tried other foam rollers, and I just wanted to offer something additionally that could be used for spinal health. And when I put the spine, on it, the size of the groove is made so that you can even roll clear up into the neck, your head on it, clear down to the low back. So it will literally, it's like a roller for stretching, increasing, blood flow, hydration, everything into the spinal column. So I have it in 2 different densities. Now, I was in San Francisco on one of those motorized bicycles and not paying attention. And all of a sudden there's this sign, don't go here, so I'm like trying to stop, and there's people behind me. And so I'm looking, waving at them so they don't run into me. And I put my foot down, but there was nothing there. So I slammed into this guardrail and my ribs were out. Now I went to my chiropractor, who uses all kinds of different techniques, Pedibond, everything. I went to a craniosacral upledger guy. I mean, I did everything. And I'm like going like, oh my gosh, I can barely move my arm. And the prototype to the backtrack came. I got on there, rolled on it. My rib went in. I rolled on it again the next day, and it was completely in. I could raise my arms, no pain. It was just like, I was so happy with the design of this roller. And yeah, it's not about myofascial release, and there's some good things to myofascial release, but this is to do something different. And the other thing is this material is self-skinning polyurethane foam, which is super expensive, by the way. And even the mold, the aluminum mold that it had to be cut to be able to pour this with the heated channels and everything else, and it's super duper expensive. But that's the only way that you could get the different densities and the action that this provides.
I love how you talked about ribs, because I was going to bring that up right now. A lot of reason people roll out is to try to get ribs a lot of times. And I've even in the past had to tell patients, like, they're like, well, what do I do when I don't have you? I'm like, well, try to roll out, and sometimes you can get the rib to go, but it's very difficult to get a rib back in place just using a regular foam roller. The beautiful thing about your design is that central canal where the spine floats, it's still putting a little bit of pressure on the TVPs of the spine. Right.
Yeah.
But you're getting that floating
purpose.
action of the facets, and then like the hydration of the disc, like you're saying. And it's easier to move the ribs, like, because it's like right on the spot where you need it. And then it's got good density, like you're saying. And then the other thing I love that you mentioned is I can move a whole lot further up in the spine and down further on the spine with yours, compared to some of these other ones where you're kind of just mid-range, like upper thoracics, and then you can get maybe down to the junction or the thoracolumbar junction, but then it gets uncomfortable. With yours, you can move a whole lot further and it's not as uncomfortable, but you can still feel that action of it actually moving things and reorganizing things. So the centrality of it makes a huge difference, because you're getting much better movement of the spinal column. Those joint mechanoreceptors can fire while you're actually doing it. So there's a lot of even proprioceptive functioning hitting the brain and entrainment taking place. So it goes beyond like just these structural things we're talking about. You're getting a lot of brain stimulation just rolling up and down that thing. So I love it. That thing's a lot of fun. Nick, I think I got one of those. Sorry, I don't think you got one.
I got one too, buddy.
Oh, you did get one.
Yeah,
okay,
I got one. Yeah.
They come in 2 different densities. I don't know if I sent.
I got both. I got a red
and I think I sent Dr. Nick just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really helpful. People have really. I have a product review on the website where this lady, fibromyalgia, like chronic pain, every single foam roller she's ever tried in her life is just giving her pain. And she uses the medium one, the orange one. And it actually has helped align her spine and relieve pain and improve her posture. It was just like, amazing. There's so many people out there that can't get aggressive, with certain products, and that's what the different densities are about.
Well, and I love the disc conversation, because we're getting that movement, like you're speaking when you're rolling, you are getting a lot of that pumping action of the disc. And as a chiropractor, I see lots of compression. I see compression in the lumbar spine. I see it a lot in the neck. I mean, you see it a lot. And like you're saying, if you don't have good hydration in those discs, it's going to add to joint dysfunction. And then that adds to subluxation, which starts to add to nerve issues. And then we're just getting more and more disconnected, and we have all these pain and these problems. So that centrality of the product and what it's doing, it's magical. So very, very cool. Really, really enjoyed that one.
Awesome.
So I'd love for you guys, if you wouldn't mind, just for people listening, because you're talking about a lot of like technical stuff, David, and I love it. It's so important though, but maybe just for simplicity, if you guys could just break down that hydration component and the pump, and maybe even just discussing a little bit more about what's actually happening, because so many people, they disc bulge, I got a disc herniation, maybe just talking about a little bit more about structure, the pumping action, hydration, because those are key pieces for people to understand rehabilitation and self-care.
Right.
Well, I'll just Eileen, go ahead, and then I'll follow up after you talk.
So if you Google the benefits of an S-shaped spine, you only find 2 references. It's pretty much unknown. But when you have a spine that's in an S shape, your muscles don't have to work as hard. And you have these 30, 60, and 90-degree angles in the spine. It's like a Roman arch in architecture, is very strong. And then it causes, so in gravity shape, shear forces in an S-shaped spine cause the facet bone to clamp facet bone on facet bone. So it's like a vice, it's strong. Where if you have a flatter back, where then you see more compression, because it's not kind of offset like a shock absorber, taking part of the brunt of it and at an angle where the disc can still float. So when it's straight, you've lost that. So you have increased compression, less hydration, and then you have shear forces going in the opposite direction, which then, so a disc is not like a muscle, it's like a ligament. Ligaments do not stretch. So there's tension on that disc. And then when it's too much, when the spine's been too straight, then it herniates, because the bone then shifts, out of place. And so when Dr. Nick is talking about, explaining compression, or like, spinous or transverse process, or all these things, shape of the spine is key, because you cannot change muscle attachments on bones. Everybody has all these tight muscles, so we're stretching. I say it's like refusing to remove the nail out of your tire and carrying around a compressed air can. You can still get from point A to point B. But if we had a way to induce the body to an S-shaped curve, our muscles would be relaxing. We'd have less compression, but then our shear forces at the 90-degree angle would be pushing bone on bone. See, you talked about the meninges and the fascia and all that stuff on the back. We have basically the multifidus and the interspinalis muscles. Those are like short muscles that their job is to hold up posture. But what is happening is they're very weak and they can't hold it for long, because you're supposed to have the S-shaped curve. It's like when it doesn't have the S-shaped curve, it's like an emergency. Your body tightens muscles so that you don't fall flat on your face. So it's expending all this energy, it's giving you pain, it's increasing compression, and then it's shearing your discs and your bones out of place. And so this posture, this S-shaped posture, is pretty much, unknown. but you're going to be able to move easier in gravity, be in less pain, and that like that spinous floating and catching, you said the TSP, those are like the spinous is that pointy bone up the middle of your back. And the transverse process are those edges on the outside edge of your vertebrae that, you could feel when you put your hands on your back. And so that's why we can benefit the body by letting that spinous float in this groove. And then when you lay on it, the weight of your body, it's like a train on a train track. It guides the bone, stretches it, and kind of adjusts it, into place. So we need to look at how can we get the S-shaped posture, because it alleviates all these problems. It gives you the mechanical advantage. It's like if you have a bent crankshaft in a car, your motor's going to seize, it's going to run hot, all those kinds of things. And it's just like our body. Compression will deteriorate the joint. It'll rub off edges of your bones. And, people don't look at the physics of all this coming in line with our body. Borelli in 1680 had a guy with a 100-pound sack on the shoulder, with his trunk of his body just, 4 inches forward. And there was over 25,000 pounds of compression and shear forces that went through the vertebrae of the spine. So this is why, our everyday living situation is wearing us out, why we're getting tight muscles and things like that. And so, in simple terms, we have the wrong shape, so we have tight muscles. So it's like, let's get the shape, then our body can hydrate and our nerves can impulse, and we're just going to feel better.
Well said. And to add to that, so what Eileen's talking about, look at all the things that cause this problem that we're talking about. You have, especially now, so you have forward head translation and posture all day long as people are looking down at their cell phones. So that's a biggie. You're talking about the weight of how just moving that weight forward affects our spine. But your head's heavy, 5 to 7 pounds, and it's forward all day. That's putting a lot of pressure elsewhere. And the body has to deal with that, with like what Eileen's saying. We sit a lot, we sit too much. And most people that sit don't sit properly. They don't engage the pelvic floor. So when they're sitting, there's this huge loss of the lumbar curve and the thoracolumbar junction. So like Eileen's saying, there's tons of energy leaks where your body has to overwork all day long to manage force and handle gravity all day long. And it's funny, I hear this so many times a week from new patients that walk through my office. There's always a comment or something of they had an X-ray at some point of their spine and they say, oh, I have degenerative joint disease. Honestly, degenerative joint disease is nothing more than just a translation of my spine cannot handle force properly, because the body will lay down more bone on the vertebra above and below the disc when it can't stabilize or it can't handle force. So it starts to build and lay down more calcium around the disc to support you, or the facets. So if you have degenerative joint disease, all that translates to is you have an unhealthy spine, and you need to start taking better care of your spine. But I think it's funny because there's this joke in chiropractic. We always say that people take better care of their teeth than they do their spine, right? Because it's cosmetic. Everybody's got to look at it all day. But if we were all walking around and you could see everybody's spine, and we wanted to have pretty looking spines, it'd be a very different world, and I'd be a lot busier than I am right now. But the reality of what you're speaking to is, it's so true. This is a big problem, from just ergonomics daily to your nervous system being overstressed. If we're in this fight or flight survival defense mode, the body kind of goes into a ball and everything goes into flexion. That's another trigger that's going to add to this, because you get something called adverse mechanical cord traction. So there's all these layers that contribute to what we're talking about. And these are just great tools for self-care, what Eileen's talking about, to combat these things. And to really kind of, for some people, reverse this problem if you don't have this S-shaped curve. And then for others, just to maintain it based off what you do for a living and the ergonomics that you may have. And we're just combating life, to be honest with you. And your spine's got to carry you everywhere. So why not have tools at home that help you basically effectively deal with this a little bit better. And this is what we're talking about. That's what I love about this one.
I was just in the airport and I took a point to try to find people with an S-shaped spine. And, I left at 7 a.m. I didn't get in until 5 p.m. I had 2 different layovers. So I was looking at a lot of people. Do you know how many people I saw with the right S-shaped spine in all of that whole weekend? 2 there and then flying back.
You could probably count them on one hand.
3.
Yeah.
This is so epidemic. People don't even know it. They're so used to taking ibuprofen or, putting up with it, or the opiate epidemic. Low back pain alone in America is $100 billion a year, and how many failed surgeries. And the thing that I love about this equipment, because there's a process. The first thing we do is we do a sit up over a power cushion, then we do the back track roll, then we do a pelvic tilt, then we do the neck flexion. And then, like flossing and brushing your teeth, Dr. Sugar used to say that, you floss and brush the teeth you want to keep. It's like doing these exercises, and not very many. You could spend 5-10 minutes and make a huge difference, in a person's spine a day. And when I show people these things, I could take an 80-year-old grandmother who can barely walk to an athlete, like a UFC fighter that I've worked with, or a Major League Baseball player, and I can do an evaluation on them, put them through the exercises, and all of a sudden their muscles are loose, they gaining reach, they, feel better. It's like these exercises, it needs to be like a movement, spinal fitness. It's not yoga, it's not Pilates, it's not golf, but it's spinal fitness. It sells itself. You try it and it's life-changing. So there's more compliance. Like, for instance, if somebody's got, forward head posture and they're having headaches because all their muscles in their neck are tight and it's radiating down their arms, if they have their little exercise monitor that says, get up and move. You've been sitting for an hour, get your 250 steps in, or, drink your water. You could just do your neck shaper, you could just do, like 5 or 6 of those in an hour. And you'd be surprised at how you find yourself sitting up and your muscles going loose. And so it's super simple to integrate, in your life. It's just like after Dr. Sugar died in 2016, nobody's teaching it. So it's like, this is my passion. And so I'm like so thankful that you guys brought me on today, that we're talking about this.
No, thank you. This is good stuff. I love it. So you brought out the tool. Bring out the neck shaper, because let's jump into that one.
Now this originated from a prototype that Dr. Sugar had. He literally had a catcher's mask.
Okay.
And then he would teach us how to like look up, and then it's just chin down. It's like C5. If you nod at somebody, I'm agreeing with you. That's C5. So all it is just look up to the ceiling. Some people can barely look up without pain. Wherever it is, that's where you start. You're just looking up, and then it's just chin down, and then you just totally relax and use the force to push your head back. And that actually loosens your low back muscles, because your low back muscles were tight because your head was too far forward. So those go loose. And then your shoulders go back. Everybody used to tell me, stand up straight, put your shoulders back. It was the position of my head that caused my shoulders to be forwarded. So it's just, a cushioned little piece that you put on your head, forehead and your chin, and you just put the force, and then you just loosen and push it back. And then your spine begins to learn that your head is supposed to be back. It's like if I'm exhausted, like all day traveling in an airport, I just feel like my posture's not good. I just immediately go like that. And it's like, oh yeah, now my muscles are loose, my head's where it's supposed to be, it helps develop that habit. But this, also is 1 inch, so you can put weights on it. And I have all these other kind of cushions. One's for the neck and low back, so I can lay like on a workout bench and I can put that below my head and kind of hang my head off the end. And then I can put weights and force. So this neck shaper, when you have like a fulcrum underneath it, again, with that special groove, then it's exercising the multifidus interspinalis muscles, but it's affecting global posture and segmental posture. So the neck shaper is pretty amazing. There's been some awesome stories with people. There's this one guy who is going to have a fusion in his neck for 10 years, just intractable neck pain. Nobody could do anything for him. He was just, using, painkillers. And he had this for 2 weeks. And he did like 5 or 6 neck flexions about every couple hours throughout the day for 2 weeks. His pain went away. He got curvature enough that they no longer wanted to operate on him. He doesn't even need it. I mean, I'm actually flying and going to Stockton to the Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz Academy meeting Cesar Gracie from the jiu-jitsu, and I'm training his fighters because all the fighters are having replaced discs in their neck or neck fusions because they're all like this, hunched over fighting. And here this device is able to reverse and get that curvature in the neck.
So Eileen, I think you need to rename it to the spine shaper.
The spine shaper.
I have a testimonial for that one. No joke. Like, I know it's for the neck, but like when I first used that, the very first round, I just did 10 reps. I sat like you're doing, just lifted up, did 10 reps. And then the rest of the day I went and sat down and I had to sit and I was like, it was like this awkward feeling. I have to bend a lot throughout the day. I'm constantly bending over the table. So like my life is lots of flexion and extension, but a lot of flexion. And so, lordosis curve and the cervical spine and the lumbar curve are always going to be under stress for me. And I can feel it, at the long of my end days, at the end of my long days, I have this like crazy stiffness sometimes in my back. So I use that thing, and that day, noticeably standing up straighter with ease, not like it was forced, like I was trying to get myself up, and then even my head back over my shoulders. And it was an interesting feeling because it was foreign to me. But then I kept using it daily, and then it kind of like lessened the intensity of it. But again, standing up much straighter, much more at ease, and again, not having as much of that stiffness because I've also been using the foam rollers almost every day. So I love that thing. The neck shaper is great, but I would say instead of neck shaper, it's probably the spinal shaper. Because like you're saying, it did affect my low back. I was using it on my neck and I noticed a noticeable change on the lumbar spine as well. So it does have a global effect for sure. And then the foam rollers are great. I'm doing the rotations, the edge of the table. Then I could last about 11, 12 minutes the first time I did them. And then I'm all the way up to like 20 minutes where I can handle them at 20 minutes. But when I started, definitely some tension when you put them under there, but then you hit like this sweet spot in between where the tension lets up. And then at the back end, you'll start to build a little bit more tension. But that window started getting wider and wider of no tension to the point where like it released quicker. And then I wouldn't get tension until like maybe around 20 minutes. But noticeable changes just in a small period of time, like you're saying. Like I believe when I spoke to you over email, we talked about probably a 3-month protocol with a lot of these things of being real focused daily. And honestly, within the first like week and a half, I started noticing changes. So it's not something that somebody's going to do where you're going to be like waiting for this big change that's going to take forever. The changes actually happen pretty significant changes pretty quickly with just daily use. And like you're saying, it's like 10 minutes, if that, to do these things, and then you work your way up to 20 over time. But like just starting just 10 minutes is all it takes. And it's like you're saying, it's like brushing the spine. It's spinal hygiene for self-care is honestly what I would probably name that.
And you can multitask while you're laying over the rolls. You can read, you can meditate. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do. So
I thought the meditation, I'm glad you brought that up because that's what I did. I just did breath work. And the more breath work you do on those things, the faster the release you actually get. So I noticed bigger releases when I was focusing on just doing breath work on those things. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so Dr. Sugar taught me, that's one of the things after I got ran over by the car, he had me fold bath towels in half, fold them in so there was a groove in the middle. And then we used rubber bands on the ends because, you know, depending on the curve, you might have to use a really little towel or then make it bigger as time went on. So we used those for the low back and the neck, and that's how I survived, you know, because when gravity's not in the equation anymore, the muscles can let go. And so he used to, on the neck flexion with the power cushion, they used to use that towel on top of the cushion. And so when I was making the cushions, it's like, why not make 5 different diameters? You know, I had a 3D printer, so I printed molds and poured prototypes to size people to see, okay, what diameters is going to fit everybody. So I went 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2, and 3 3/4. And that seemed to fit everyone. Now I think I need a 2 1/2 for the people with really, really flat low backs. I've come across some people that way to where it's almost like just have a little tiny hand towel down there, you know, to begin with, and then they could use the neck, you know, cushion. But his idea was when you do that twist, when you know, give yourself a low back curve, you lead with your eyes and you twist, then it's going to increase blood flow and nutrition to the disc. Instead of being like in a sponge, more fixed state, you could change it to a gel, because we want a healthier disc that's in a better location. And so the towels worked, you know, pretty good. It was a good starting point. But when I got the prototypes of these, it was literally life-changing. A little boy that came in with his father, they had a business next door, had a trampoline accident, and he'd been having seizures ever since the accident. He'd been to chiropractic, physical therapy, nothing had helped. And so I had these ugly prototype cushions, and I taught him how to do the back twist, sized him, and gave those to him. And a month later, his father came in and said he's never had a seizure since.
Oh, wow.
He uses them daily. He takes them everywhere with him in his backpack. And I've had other people that were plagued with migraines, with terrible tension in their upper shoulders, that they were literally loaning out my prototype cushions and, you know, talking about how they've been migraine free and how great they were. So, yeah, so I ended up, you know, if you try to break it in half because of this groove, we were having cushions break in half. So inside these, there's actually a dowel, a wooden dowel. So you can't break them in half. I don't know if you noticed that.
I didn't try.
But these little holes are where nails held the dowel in when we poured them. But when you have the properly sized rolls and you're not in pain when your legs are out flat, one of the phenomenons is you will literally hear your bones crack when all the muscles let go. Mm-hmm. And they shift. And that's where, you know, as you increase the diameter, you'll hear the cracking more with maybe the medium, you know, density. But, you know, everybody's got a starting point and just baby steps. But people just using these one time, they feel such a benefit that the compliance for people in back pain, I mean, because I've been there, I've been in such terrible back pain, you'd almost do anything not to be in pain. So these things work fast and they're, you know, amazing.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the why some more, right? Like you have a great product. we were talking about this S-shaped curvature. So I want our listeners to picture something real quick. Imagine this S-shaped spinal column, and there's the brain on top of the column, and we have a spinal cord like a rope that passes through the S-shaped column. Now, what Eileen is speaking to is when we lose curvature of our spine, whether it's like loss of lordosis, cervical curvature, or even lumbar curvature, we start to get a flattening of that curve. So instead of it being an S, it starts to straighten out. And then what do you think happens to the spinal cord inside the column when the curvature straightens out? It builds tension on your spinal cord. And there's a lot of things that happen from this, from just regular back pain to, like she's describing, migraines, headaches, just global pain moving into other areas of the body because the body's trying to be stable and handle force and it can't. So it's got to take that load elsewhere to deal with it, all the way to cord tension when it's built up and it's constant like that, to where your nervous system's constantly in fight or flight. So this can lead to a whole onslaught of other health problems. When your nervous system's tone is constantly in survival defense mode because your brain's number one priority is survival. So if you have cord tension and it never lets up, that can affect your breathing, your focus, your concentration, can cause anxiety, can cause digestive problems. I mean, there's this onslaught of stuff that happens just from something as simple as what we're speaking to right now, which is just your spinal curvature. So it's such a simple thing we're talking about as far as the how and the what to address this big why. And what we're talking about is there's this, like you said, 3 people out of probably hundreds that you looked at over the weekend at the airport, because it's a rare thing because of our ergonomics and just how we live our lives now. But the reality is the fixing and the self-care piece of this is very simple. And if you just give it a little bit of time and work on these things, you can see big changes in your overall health. And it can be from a lot of things. So don't just put it in a bundle of like, it's just going to help my back pain. It goes beyond that. And I'm glad you brought up some of those other testimonials because it goes way beyond that. And I hope people can actually picture that and see what I'm trying to explain, because it makes worlds of difference when you have slack for your spinal cord. I mean, there's even research that shows that a lack of spinal curvature causes loss of blood flow over your lifetime. And it's one of the contributors to Alzheimer's disease right now, the loss of circulation to the brain. So that's long-term something that your spinal curvature actually affects. So there's all kinds of things, right? So these are the solutions we're talking about. And Eileen's done a great job of designing some really neat tools to help people deal with these type of things and to improve their life.
Another aspect, because maybe some of the listeners are into sports and they want to be athletic. I think that trainers need to be aware of exercises that actually reduce curvature and put strain on the body, potentially, injuring someone, versus the exercises to gain the curvature. And why, like, say, would a runner or an athlete who jumps want to have a good S-shaped curve? One of the studies that Dr. Sugar did with the Olympic Center in Colorado with Bob Beaton and Jennifer Stone, and then Ron O'Neill from the New England Patriots. He was there for 26 years. And then Smitty from York Barbell. He was an Olympic heavy lifting coach. He worked with them for, forever. And they wanted to find out, why did a football lineman that had that big low back curve always overpower the lineman with a straight back? So they, for the first time, took a mathematical approach to every disc in the vertebrae to calculate compression and shear forces in movement to identify the positive advantage of an S-shaped curve over a straight one. But one simple way to explain, like stride length in a runner, like if you have the S-shaped curve, if every listener would just stand up and feel their hamstrings, stand like you're in neutral. probably 90% of the listeners are going to have tight hamstrings. That means that you don't have the S-shaped curve, but Dr. Sugar and the team, and they sent the mathematics to Cornell University, they calculated what forces are translating into our hip and our knee joints, and how much effort does the hamstring have to exert. Like if you're standing erect and you have good neutral posture, it's 0 effort on the hamstrings. And it's about 86 pounds, in the hip, where if you have a 100-pound trunk and you're 2 inches forward at the waist and 2 inches at the head, which is very typical, which you see most people standing, that hamstring, that tight hamstring, is 843 pounds of effort. And there's like over 800 pounds in the knees. Why are we seeing so many knee replacements? It's because of not having the S-shaped curve. But when you go to run, see, the body is like got all of its own priorities. So it's got those tight hamstrings to keep you from falling forward. That is a long muscle that is only designed for running, for locomotion, for jumping, for launching objects. But when the postural muscles have fatigued and weakened, the long muscles take over the postural work, and then they're no longer available. And when you calculate the curve of the low back with the tight hamstrings, it causes your foot to plant early, so you have a shorter stride length. So you can't jump as high, can't run as fast. So it's really the mechanical advantage to use this in athletics so that you have the superior athlete. That was Dr. Sugar's passion, was to be able to identify the superior athlete, and then the ones that didn't have the shape, to be able to give it to them. Because up until his methods of where you have like posterior support underneath you, it's like a train over a train track. This is the power cushion, where you do a sit up over and you do a pelvic tilt over. It's like, you think if you're going to move a boulder, a heavy boulder, and you have a straight bar. In order to get the leverage, you put a block underneath there close to the boulder. So literally you can use, the equilibrium, the math is 100 pounds can move 500 pounds. So Dr. Sugar was really into cranes and lifting and moving and construction. So he started looking at leverage and the human body and how all this worked. So he came up with the power cushion. So the spine is the lever, and then the weight that we put on top of the body is like the boulder. So we can put the muscles in like absolute tension. And then, depending on where the fulcrum is, it's strategic with the weight. So that way it builds the muscle. And the one exercise, the pelvic tilt, because of how the underneath the body's supported and you're laying, supine, basically, with the pelvic tilt, with the force on top of it, it's like the rectus muscle pull with the weight on top of it creates leverage. So if you have a herniated L4, L5, which when you look at Borelli's study mathematically, that's the point where thousands of pounds go to force. That's why that's the breaking point of most problems. But we can literally shear them back in place because the power cushion gets rid of posterior shear. We're having people do regular sit-ups. And that is just horrible, because when you bend your spine, it's no longer facet bone on facet bone, and they can twist and they can, injure. And so the power cushion with that fulcrum eliminates the posterior shear. It actually puts the body in posture as if it already had good posture. So then it can build like a sit-up. It builds the external obliques. With the pelvic tilt, it strengthens the rectus. and then it's shearing back the bones. And so when you get up, like these athletes, these UFC fighters or whatever, I have them bend over. You know, we measure their hamstrings. I have them bend over, see how far they can reach. Like have them jump, you know. So if you have bad posture, you're going to land forward or backwards. Have them raise their arms up. If they can't put their arms all the way up, you know, it indicates neck problems because, you know, you have that resistance. Have them turn their head. And then I do, like Dr. David said, I only did like 10 reps of that the first time. That's all I do with them. I do 10 sit-ups, few little backtracks, 10 pivot tilts, 10 neck flexions. I had one guy get 11 inches of reach in one session, but it's always 2, 3, 4 inches. Wow. And the weight on top makes a difference. I had a helicopter pilot who had 2 torn hamstrings and a torn quad. And, you know, so, and he could barely bend over. So I was just going baby with him. I wasn't putting weight on him. And he really didn't. He says, I feel better, but he didn't gain anything. And then my force applicators came. I had a dream because that $8,000 machine with all that was not very portable with rods to get the weight on you. So I had a dream about just clamping something on ordinary barbells you have to have your force on you. So those came, so we got him on the power cushion to do a sit-up, and we put that on him, and his back's cracking like crazy, and he did about 10 of those, and he got up and he gained 3 inches of reach. So the leverage with the absolute tension, with that fulcrum under your body, it's just this magic combination that Dr. Scherger was the one who came up with. His equipment was really archaic, and basically I improved all of it. It's what I did.
Beautiful. It's amazing. Okay, if someone didn't have the, like the power cushion looks amazing, but if you didn't have the power cushion, could you use the back tracker as like a modified early?
Well, you can
modifier?
You can do the pelvic tilt on the back track because you just hold it in place so it can't roll, and you climb up on top of it, and you can do a pelvic tilt on that. You can't do a sit-up. It's the wrong arc. Even a medicine ball is the wrong arc, so physics wise. But what you can do, and my free PDF guide on the website says, take a sleeping bag. You roll a sleeping bag and tape it up with duct tape, and you can kind of tighten the center of it, and you can create a makeshift power cushion. Now I'm, you know, have my final prototype on the power cushion, and now it actually has a neck shaper attachment to it.
Wow. Oh, wow.
You know, that just pulls out with pins. That was something that Dr. Scherger always had talked about. And so when I make those, I mean, they have, because of all of that, I mean, it's got internal steel plates and all this. They're quite the deal to get made, but and I'm working on the force applicator. I got a new clamp coming because this old clamp didn't work very well, and it'll turn, so I have to thicken this and notch that, and then I don't want as much rotation because I had it to where you could fully rotate it, but we only need a little bit. So I'm making the final changes, but those will be available, but not this year. But I have guides, because you can do with the workout buddy. Right. You can have them put their hands on your chest and do like a plank on top of you, and same thing on the iliac. And my illustrations show exactly where to put your hands, how to do it, how you can fold your own towels, how you can stand and do the neck flexion. You know, the equipment makes it much easier, but this is something that everyone needs. So I have all the free PDF guides, even a list of the exercises to do and not to do. Like if somebody does a curl, a standing curl, their back muscles activate as a primary mover to hold the force from on top. And we don't want to exercise those muscles in that way. So what we do is we tell you do a preacher curl, sit down, take the force off that low back. So we like have you rethink every exercise that you're doing and do different ones to work those muscle groups so that you can safely, you know, still be athletic, but not damage your spine.
Can we talk about the hips a little bit too? Because so many people going for hip surgery, and I don't know if there's something you can talk about in regards to like the S curve and hip issues. Because I mean, it's a huge problem for so many.
One of my PDF guides show the shear forces and compression forces at the hip with and without the S-shaped curve. And it's like an 800-pound difference. So
Wow.
basically, it is prematurely wearing out the joints, the hips and the knees, because of not having, the S-shaped curve. So it's just obvious that people need it, but they don't even know they need it.
Yeah. So let's talk about where people can access this information, because I mean, Eileen, it's so fun to like just watch you get excited about the different things you're explaining, and David too. I mean, it's been fun to just tune into what you guys are sharing, and I literally hope everybody can listen to this, not just our the people that are tuning into us regularly, but I mean, this is one that I'm going to share with everybody, because this spinal hygiene is not talked about enough. This is such critical information. So obviously people can access some of these tools on your website, but please like share, where do they find the PDF? How do they learn how to exercise properly? How do they find out more about you and what you're doing? And please share all those details.
Right. Well, my website is Creatrix Solutions. That's the name of my company. It's CREATRIX solutions.com. Or you can just type in spinal fitness and it'll forward you to Creatrix Solutions. And under exercise, there's a lot of drop downs that go everything from explaining the neck, the back, the different posture correctors, the different roles, but there's one that says PDF guides. And so there's a lot of content on there. I'm adding a bunch of new videos on using the spinal fitness equipment. Right now, there's some of those posted on our Instagram, which is Creatrix Solutions. So they can see me in action, showing you how that really works. And so.
Perfect. Awesome. For our listeners, check it out. Go check out her website. Look at all these fun tools we just spoke about today. This is important self-care, like Dr. Nick was saying at the beginning of the episode today. So this is one of those things that's not talked about enough, and very grateful and blessed that we had Eileen on here to shed light on this specific topic. And you're doing amazing things for my profession, so I really have to thank you. Mm-hmm. More chiropractors need to look into these things for self-care for their patients. So Eileen, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and thank you for spreading the word.
Oh, you got it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just one last thing. I mean, I didn't get to share my experience with the product, and I gotta say, like, I wouldn't have truly understood it until I tried it. And that there's so much power in actually just getting a chance to use the product. So I just so grateful that you sent it my way, and it's definitely changed my awareness about my spine and just the profound impact. I mean, my experience is very similar to David's, in that I couldn't stay with the two rollers underneath me for more than 10 minutes, and then gradually increased, and I ended up taking them with me whenever we left the house, because if you were gone for over a night, I was going to use those every night, because the impact on just even waking up, the mobility in the morning, and just the ease and just letting off that pressure off the lower back. And as you're diving deeper into the content with just this S-shaped curve, like, this is the goal I think for every human, to really recognize that there's a certain internal environment, structural integrity that needs to be intact for your nervous system, for your cardiovascular, your brain, your immune system, your lymphatics, for everything to work properly. And if this isn't being addressed, all of us as healthcare practitioners, we're missing out on a huge factor within this human body. I mean, I like to tell my patients that trees, they're meant to be solid in the ground, and they create their own shape based on the movements of the sun and the rain and the water that's there. But we're mobile beings, and if we're not doing the things that serve this mobility within the body, we're really not serving the body, this human frame. So this is foundational information for people. I just had to share that.
It's
thank you.
anti-aging. One last thing, we're
Yeah.
born in a C shape. We can't even sit up. But look at everybody old. They've lost their curves. They're bending over.
Yeah.
Then their organs started shutting down. Dr. Sugar worked with a 90-year-old that was in a wheelchair. It took about 12 months, but this 90-year-old had the S-shaped curve and could run up and down stairs. It was just so much more stable. So it's life-changing.
Truly.
Eileen, thank you so much. And for our listeners, go check out our stuff, creatrixsolutions.com, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.